Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by CuriosityStream. Okay, so weirdly enough, this is my third attempt at making this video. Originally, I was just going to talk about the Mandalorian pilot, and I only really signed up for Disney Plus to check out the show. And if you're looking for my thoughts on that first episode, I'll say that I thought it was pretty solid. But the more time I spent on Disney Plus, the more I really just didn't like it. So instead of just talking about a pilot episode, I thought I'd explore that, discuss what I find kind of off-putting about Disney Plus, and touch on their other launch offerings as well.
Fighting evil while weaving her web of justice, it's Spider-Woman.
I've had problems with Netflix for a very long time, and one of my problems with them is just how thoroughly I feel like they ignore older films, with a shockingly low number of pre-1975 movies even being available to stream. But now I kind of feel like the main character of a Twilight Zone episode being granted one wish. It came true, but not in the way I'd hoped. Disney has a lot of older films in their back catalog, but well, okay. Of course I'm glad there's a place for animated classics like Snow White and Fantasia. And even though I'm not likely to rewatch those on a regular basis, I'm really glad they're being made readily available at a pretty decent price point. But for every Fantasia, there's 5 things like The Bears and I or Max Keeble's Big Movie, disposable films that are hard to recommend to anyone except for those with intense nostalgia for them. Scrolling through Disney Plus is to be reminded of how many terrible live-action films the company produced in the last century. Because the vast majority of what you're going to find, big franchises aside, is things like The Cat from Outer Space, not to be confused with That Darn Cat, both of which are more easily accessible to people now than like The Best Years of Our Lives, which isn't even available on a mainstream service. But I can already hear a lot of people writing in the comments that I'm being unfair. After all, doesn't every streaming service just have mountains of garbage on it? I mean, one look at Netflix tells you this isn't unique to Disney Plus. But I think what makes Disney Plus's selection particularly depressing is it all feels like it comes from the same 1 or 2 types of garbage. We're on Netflix and Amazon Prime, of course you're gonna find all sorts of weird and terrible movies. At least there'll be like a real variety of them. Bad horror movies, off-putting R-rated dramas, weird documentaries. A lot of it's terrible, but there's at least a lot going on there. On Disney Plus, you're most likely to find bad films in one of 2 modes. Bad Disney live-action movies like Meet the Deedles, or Disney Channel originals like Jump In. Give me a weird, all-over-the-map selection of garbage over this bland stuff any day. And what's worse is that when you scroll through, a lot of the selection that you think is available just isn't. I've always had a soft spot for the 80s comedy Adventures in Babysitting, so I clicked on it only to be informed that it'll be on the service in June 2021. And that happens all the time here. Like, it really cuts into their highly touted MCU selection, as a lot of them will just tell you that they'll be there eventually. I understand that ultimately this is kind of just the growing pains of a new service, but I'd kind of rather they just weren't listed at all, instead of constantly being told what isn't on the service.
About Thor!
I'm going to kill somebody with these things.
Take it back, Brad! Take back what you said about Thor!
The Disney Channel has a really big presence on Disney Plus. Star Wars, Marvel, and The Simpsons may be the shiny names they want to promote, but Disney Channel originals really feel like they form the backbone of this library, especially when it comes to the TV show selection. If you came to the service for The Mandalorian, or especially The Simpsons, you're probably not going to find much comparatively adult shows on there. Disney Plus has announced a lot of shows that are going to appeal to teens and adults, but most of them aren't coming out for at least a year. And if you're showing up for that kind of content, there's a good chance you're going to be disappointed. They may be pushing Star Wars really hard, but make no mistake, the average show you'll find on the service is much more in line with The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody than The Mandalorian.
No, I don't watch Wizards of Waverly Place.
But alright, I should probably at least give the other launch originals a fair shake. I've already mentioned that I enjoyed The Mandalorian, which is definitely worth noting, but the other stuff isn't on that level. The Lady and the Tramp remake is exactly what you'd expect if you saw this year's Lion King, except clearly a little cheaper. I gotta say, I don't really think talking dogs in movies have come all that far in the last 20 years. Like, compare the ones in the 2003 family comedy Good Boy,
Pal, kid, loosen my collar a notch. I got a foof in my hat.
to this Lady and the Tramp.
Oh, that's him, Trusty.
Leave the police work to me.
To me at least, it just looks fake in a different way. I guess there's some charming voice acting here, but overall there's just not much to recommend. If you're like dying to experience this story again, just put on the much better looking original. Then there's High School Musical, the series, which is trying to be a more grown-up, self-aware take on the franchise. In it, a bunch of high school kids try to put on a stage version of the original High School Musical. And it's all shot in this mockumentary style that you'll recognize from The Office or Parks and Rec. And if any show sums up Disney Plus the best, it's this one. Because I have no idea what tone this thing is going for. On one hand, it feels like it's trying to capture the Glee audience, being slightly edgier than the old High School Musical and dropping pop culture references. But it also plays things way too safe to actually capture that, because this thing is still super squeaky clean. And despite trying to do the whole documentary thing, the show is still lit like a Disney Channel product, so their attempts at any sort of grounded realism really fall flat. This isn't to say it's the worst thing ever. I don't think the kids are bad, but the writing and especially the jokes are really not helping them out. And overall, I just come away not knowing who this is for. It's not mature enough for teens or adults, but it clearly doesn't want to be just for kids either. And then we have a pair of reality shows, and these are fine. The Jeff Goldblum one is pretty charming, and if you like the idea of Jeff Goldblum talking to people about sneakers for half an hour, you'll probably enjoy this. It's not really something I would seek out, but it's not a bad watch. Then there's the Kristen Bell hosted Encore. As a big Veronica Mars fan, I was happy to see Bell, but this show doesn't really have much for her to do. It's a reality show where former high school classmates have to come together and restage a play they did over 20 years ago. It's a cute premise, I guess, but I'm just not a reality TV person, and this really reminded me why. All the obnoxious music cues that tell you how to feel, the clearly fake drama, it's all here. Again, this isn't awful, and I'm pretty sure some people will find it to be nice comfort food TV, which is fine, but it's definitely not giving me a reason to want to keep my subscription. But you might be wondering, what about the Marvel and Star Wars selection? Well, I'll give Disney Plus some credit in a few areas. I like how many bonus features, often including audio commentaries, are included here. It's something that I really miss on Netflix, and I was super happy to have them available. When it comes to the Fox movies though, you're gonna find that stuff to be more bare bones. Like, Avatar has less bonus material than the Freaky Friday remake, which isn't a huge deal, but it does seem a little weird they couldn't just bring over that stuff as well. They also don't have every MCU movie or Marvel show. Far from it, actually. Things like Thor Ragnarok and Infinity War aren't going to hit the service until next year because of pre-existing deals with Netflix. But with shows like Spectacular Spider-Man or Spider-Man 1967, it's not really clear if they're ever going to be coming. And even with some of the stuff they do have, like the 90s Spider-Man series, there's some weird issues. Like, that whole show is being listed as a single season, and it's in the incorrect order. At least Spidey and the X-Men are in their original aspect ratio though. Unlike The Simpsons, whose early seasons have been shoved into this widescreen format, zooming in on the image and cutting out some of the visual gags in the process. Still, those problems aside, it is nice to have this stuff here. Marvel, Star Wars, The Simpsons, if you love these, it might be worth a subscription. The problem is the service just seems so torn on what it wants to be. There is that kind of stuff, which appeals to both kids and adults, but the vast majority of the service is kind of a kids-only affair. Like, I get a lot of it may tap into your nostalgia, but really, is that enough? Like, I loved Phil of the Future in middle school, so I clicked on it here, watched about 5 minutes, and realized, you know, sometimes stuff you liked when you were 12 should really be left there. If you're an adult who is going to sit and rewatch old episodes of Hannah Montana, more power to you, I guess. I could also see this being a really good service for parents. But if you're looking to find something new, something that will surprise you, you're probably not going to find it in this library. I am looking forward to some of these originals, a few of which I'll probably cover here. But if you want to be challenged by your entertainment, to find new and interesting experiences that expand your film vocabulary and introduce you to styles, genres, and ideas that you may not have encountered before, Disney Plus is going to be the opposite of what you're looking for. Don't get me wrong, it can be comforting to see old favorites available, but there's too much exciting art out there to discover, love, and be challenged by than to spend my time rewatching Full Court Miracle or The Cheetah Girls 2. And if you feel the same way, you might not enjoy your time with Disney Plus very much. As time has gone on, I found myself enjoying more niche and curated streaming services, like the Criterion Channel and Shudder. Another one I'd put in that category is Curiosity Stream. This week I watched American Icons, a really good series that they just added about the life and times of some of the most famous figures in American history. I like this one a lot, and I was really surprised by how much I still had to learn about people like FDR and Babe Ruth. That's the place to go for documentaries, but that's not all you'll get. By signing up for Curiosity Stream's annual membership, you'll also be getting Nebula, a new streaming service made by independent creators like Lindsay Ellis, Just Right, CGP Grey, and me. It's a way to make content that goes beyond the demands of YouTube's algorithm and create something totally new. So you can support a lot of independent creators and get tons of high quality documentaries just by signing up for their annual membership. Only $19.99 for the entire year. Get access to all of that and a free trial by going to curiositystream.com/captainmidnight.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes.